There is a way to financial freedom, and it's contrary to all the things that you were brought up to believe. You don't have to be dependent on somebody who claims to be smarter than you, has more training than you, and understand this ridiculously complex market that's been created to separate you from your money.
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of the Passive Income Adventures. Today, we have Joey Muray on the show with us from Wealth Without Wall Street, and the name says it all. It's the ability to take the power of your financial future into your own hands and have more control over building your own wealth. And so, the conversation that comes out of that is actually pretty interesting because it's a balance of having more control over where your money goes, but also less control because passive income really requires a degree of trust and building that trust up with people who can manage the project that you're investing in a way that you have passive income generated from that. There's no true way to become financially free, meaning you can stop working if and when you want to without passive income. Retirees in the stock market already understand this. We all talk about saving up when we're 65 and then living off of a 4% or something distribution off of what we've saved up. So this concept isn't new to people, but for some reason in the world of private placements or investments that are off of Wall Street, it becomes a huge sticking point. So if you find yourself struggling with that, thinking, should I start my own real estate investing business or should I be doing some limited partner work in there and not really sure where to go? Joey and I really dive deep onto the confidence issue and learning and how to recover from a loss, how to make sure that we're putting appropriate ownership over our activities and becoming great investors. It is a skill set. So even though it is passive in the actual operation of the property itself, the management and the decision making on the portfolio side is a skill that we need to develop. One of the best ways we do that is by hanging out together. And as Joey mentions, compressing the timeline down by going out and learning with people who are surrounding us or doing what we want to be doing and can really help us to avoid some of those pitfalls. That helps to give our confidence a boost because it helps us make better decisions with our money. Joey's been doing this a really long time. He's very transparent with his income, and it's to the point where he is doing this because he loves it and he wants to help other people. And so you can look at his advice through the lens of somebody who just has discovered something that he's excited about and wants to share it with other people, and an entrepreneur in this true sense of the word, that we earn money by helping other people solve some of their biggest. So let's get on with it with Joey Muray. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Passive Income Adventures. We have Joey Muray here on wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. And Joey and I interviewed on your podcast a couple of weeks ago, and you both assured me that you are the more talkative and funny of the group. So here you are today.
He's the better looking for those of you who are listening just on audio. So thank you.
Yeah, on YouTube, you're going to be able to tell definitely he's the better looking of the pair, even though the other guy's not here.
I'm so glad to be here with you, Emma. I love being with like-minded people, sharing this message that, man, there is a way to financial freedom, and it's contrary to all the things that you were brought up to believe. You don't have to be dependent on somebody who claims to be smarter than you, has more training than you, and understand this ridiculously complex market that's been created to separate you from your money. Then we're talking about Wall Street, obviously. So glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. And I say hello to your little daughter there. So that actually kind of reminds me a little bit. We're homeschoolers, and I feel like departing from the public school system is foundational to the confidence that we gained in our ability to teach and parent our kids. When I have teachers surrounding me who have more training, education, and experience with hundreds of kids, if not thousands, and I only just have my little family, and the ability to be like, well, who do I think I am that I can educate my own children? But then when we took the dive and we actually did it and we were doing a better job of it, I realized that there's value in just really intimately knowing your subject. And so when real estate investing came up, I felt much more confident to say, well, nobody beats the market. So why would I even bother with real estate? I mean, with Wall Street, because I'm just going to do a exchange traded fund or something that just mirrors the index, and I'm going to go and put my experience, my intelligence, and all of my passion into real estate where I can actually manage the risk myself. And that background of thinking like, I got this, I think was really born in some other things that I'm doing. So how can you start with an average person who just does everything through a 401k, freedom funds, index exchange funds, or maybe has had some losses doing some actively managed, to being able to say, there are other ways out here?
Well, I think the first thing, Emma, is you had, and I'll just use your example, you had something that happened that forced you or encouraged you to take educating your kids into your own hands. I don't know what that was. It's not really important for those listening because in order for someone that you just gave the example of to kind of say, man, this wealth without Wall Street process, this financial freedom, in order to even consider it, is you have to realize that there's a problem. If you just think, man, I'm just going to rock along and I'm going to continue to just put money away blindly into this 401k that, my employer, my friends, my family have all said is to my benefit. And I'm just going to work until I'm 65. And then one day I'm going to magically have enough money piled up that I can ride off into the sunset and do all the things that I put off for those 45 years of working or whatever it was. Now I'm going to magically start spending money that I piled up and it's never going to run out. If that is the way that you see yourself going and you feel really good about it, then you should not listen to a word we're going to talk about today because it's not for you. You have to realize there's a problem. If there's no problem in your plan, there is no solution because the solution is just keep doing what you're doing. But for those who are going to listen to us today that say, man, I'm just not satisfied with the results I'm getting. I'm just not okay with putting off my kid's ballet recital. I don't want to put that off. I don't want to put off going out in the yard and throwing the baseball with my son at age 9 or 10 because man, when he's 29 or 39, he's not going to want to throw the baseball anymore. That time is over. If you don't want that kind of freedom, then none of this matters. But if you do, then you have to say something about what I'm doing right now has to change, or I'm going to continue on this path. And it's going to be 10 more years that I'm going to look back and say, man, what if I had taken the chance? What if I had taken steps to actually change my present?
So good. They call that in parenting, that's the plan B. Or when you have a problem and the person you have a problem with doesn't think it's a problem, then there's nowhere to go from here. So you have to basically get okay with it or kind of convince the other person that it's a problem. And so in my own life was when I did the math and I realized how much money I needed to retire. That feeling of okay, I need extra so it doesn't run out. And I realized that if I contributed the maximum to our IRA accounts, the Roth and the traditional IRA, then that wasn't going to be enough money to get the pile we needed because those maximum contributions. And I thought, okay, this is why wealthy people aren't maxing out their 401ks, or maybe they're maxing it out, but then they still have more and they need to figure out what to do with it. And that's really the crossroads that we came to. We used to be like, well, 15,000 or 16,000 or whatever it was a year at the time. There's no way we could put that much in our IRA because we were just barely scraping by with an emergency fund. But once we made some money on our houses, really by accident, we started realizing, oh, well, that's a pretty low contribution for what we were planning to do with our retirement. And we had to get looking outside of that. So that was a trigger for us. And I think for a lot of high income earners, it would be a similar story. Do you see that as a top contributor to people saying, like, I need to do something different? Or is there another factor that you see more often?
Just so I'm clear on the question, you're saying like the fact that they can't contribute enough is the main issue?
Yeah, they realize they're making more and they're over those contributions. And
Yeah.
now what?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there is a point where your lid has to be raised. So, I mean, just I'll take you back to my early days where I had a manager. I was in the mortgage business, by the way, for 11 years. And early in my career, I had a manager put his arm around me when we were moving into a new location, and he was showing me all these cubicles, and there was some offices next to it, and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, "You see each one of those cubicles?" He's like, "Man, each one of those are $100,000 seats." And at the time, I mean, again, I was 24. Whenever I was like, I had made 100,000, and I thought that's crazy that he just threw that out there so easily. Like, what have I been thinking that makes me think that I couldn't be making 100,000 at this stage? Well, now, so if you're at that stage, you're like, man, a Roth IRA contribution. Oh, well, yeah, I want to do that because that's all you can kind of see. But once you've moved beyond that, you look like those same vehicles, those same kind of places to park money don't make sense anymore because it's like, what am I going to do with all the rest of it? It seems like I'm just playing with this money over here. I can't really do anything with it. But the other thing that you just said, I think is really important. We created a calculator in our community, like our app that people join. We call it the community. You go in there, there's a retirement calculator that we use. And if people do that, it's like, wait a minute. if I put in this much per year and I gain the average rate of return and I want to retire by this date or this year, it does all the math for you. It tells you, oh, well, you just have to save $4 million. It's like, wait a minute, how is that going to be possible? Or it says, yeah, you wanted to retire at 59. It says you're going to retire at 89. And
Yeah.
you're like, that doesn't work for me, right? But maybe that's what it takes to realize what I've been doing is not getting me to where I want to be. And I think the people that really we attract, Emma, are people just like you and your husband who say, I want more freedom, right? I tell people we're freedom kind of junkies. Like it all starts with us for spiritual freedom. Like I want to be able to walk this world with total freedom, knowing my creator and understanding my relationship with him. And then secondly, I want to lead, that leads into financial freedom, which leads into geographical freedom, that leads into time freedom. All those things are so important to me because I cherish the time with I have 5 daughters. You just saw one of them walk in here to give me some medicine, some juice that I needed to drink. And man, each one of them has a unique need to connect with their dad. And I get that opportunity because of the way in which we've ordered our lives. We took control of our finances. We didn't allow our finances to take control of us. And we've been on this journey since 2009, when all this kind of started that ball rolling and saying, wait a minute, something's wrong and I need to do something about it. Man, it led to us creating over 50,000 a month in passive income that just came from a lot of hard knocks that now we've been able to line that process out for people so that they don't have to take 10 plus years. They can do it in much, much shorter time frame because they have a coach, they have a guide, and they have a true roadmap to success, hopefully saving all the bumps along the way.
Yeah, you definitely had a 10-year hard head start on us, so you're much farther along the, passive income path than we are, but at the same time, a lot of things you said really resonate. So, um, we were out traveling. We started the RV life last, I think, like, Labor Day, and recently we were driving down the freeway. We're pulling our rig behind us, and the kids saw a billboard for a restaurant they wanted to eat at, and we're like, as much as you can with an RV, get off the exit and go take them to that restaurant to eat. And it was like the middle of the day on a Tuesday, and we were driving across country, and we're sitting at the restaurant. And I told the kids, I said, I just really had a thought that I know this lifestyle sometimes is hard. I mean, they don't love traveling. They don't love living in an RV. And so we were talking about like, what changes do we want to make? What can we make? And I said, this conversation where we can actually have this conversation about what do you want it to look like? How do you want it to be is something that we never even would have thought about just a few years ago. And we're sitting here on a random Tuesday afternoon at a restaurant with your dad. And I would give up a lot to have him sitting here with us in a restaurant. So all of the things that are maybe hard about some of the things that we're doing, the freedom fighter kind of things that we're doing that the kids may or may not agree with. It was just so liberating to be having a family council there with dad who wasn't at work on a Tuesday. And they really sat back and that hit them hard. And they thought, okay, that's what this is about. And that realization of what we've been working on all these years to have it culminate in that moment was a really powerful event for our family and changed the way that we're kind of thinking about what the next couple of months or even the next couple of years of our lives look like. So you're taking that journey. We've taken that journey, have a long way to go. But at the same time, can you bring us back a few years by way of credibility? You alluded to it a little bit. What your background and experience is, how you got to where you are, and specifically speak to the listener who is still in that place of frustration and they're tied to a job. They may not really want to quit, but they're not really sure. There's got to be more than this. I have to be able to build wealth better than the way that I've been doing it. So tell us a little bit about your background and speak to the listener who might identify with that.
Well, I'll tell you, I told you I was in the mortgage business for 11 years and I was in my 20s making over $300,000 a year. I was really good at what I was doing and I enjoyed it. But the problem is I remember distinctly some pictures or some stories in my mind that replayed that were the kind of the fuel for change. And one of those being we would love to go to the beach as a family. But because I was in mortgage, I was constantly at someone else's beckoning call.
Mhm.
literally. Like if someone wants a pre-approval for their client, they're calling me and it doesn't matter if I'm on vacation, right? So
Yeah.
I remember distinctly telling my wife and my daughters, "Hey, you guys go on down to the beach. I'm going to be here just taking this one last phone call and I'll be down there shortly." 3 hours later,
Yeah.
I'm walking down that boardwalk behind the condo or the house or wherever we're staying, and they're walking up that same boardwalk, and they're just pissed. I mean, the disgust, disappointment on their face is, "Dad, I mean, we're here physically in the same location, but you are miles away. Like, you are not present because you are so just essentially you've been stolen by your work, and we can't be together even though we're together." And, man, that's the kind of picture that I wanted to run away from. I didn't want to continue that path. I wanted to be more present. And I didn't even know at the time what the answer was, but I just knew I couldn't continue to do what I was doing. What I did learn is that more active income does not create freedom. If anything, it created more demands on my time, more demands on just my mental capacity and less that I could give to the people that I was saying that I was working so hard for, right? And I know I'm talking to people right now because this is what guys especially struggle with, I think the most is they get a lot of dopamine hits or whatever from doing really great work. Like this just kind of God's created us to be workers and we love work. But we also realize, man, there's so much more to living this life well that is not work related. And so, yeah, I had to find a new path. That's when I read this book, Become Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. And once I read that book, it was like, wait a minute, there's all this whole other world about taking control of my finances. I need to at least start there. And then that led us into, I left my career and started the podcast with Russ. And we started to figure out, okay, now we've got our money organized. It's in a place that we can control. It's no longer in 401ks, IRAs, 529 plans, and all these places that everybody else tells us to scatter our money away from our control. It's now in my control and I need to do something with it. It's now begging me to say, what do you want me to do with this money? And I had to become a better investor, and that's why we started the podcast. We started interviewing the best of the best in passive income, and by doing it created the place to then start this passive income journey in 2020. We started with about $2,500 a month in passive income. We reported that to the world. So if you don't trust me, go back and look at our podcast. You can see our reports in June of 2020. And fast forward within 18 months, we were over 50,000 a month in passive income because we got super focused. We had the education, we had the goal, and now we had the support to get there. And so that's the whole story really quickly. But just so you know, this is very doable with the right process and the right coach along the way.
So much there, but there's one thing I really want to zero in on. When you're talking about taking back control of your money by putting it into areas where you can make the decisions, whether it's a self-directed retirement account or cash accounts or a life insurance policy. And I'm laughing because I when you were saying that, I was remembering the moment where I saw the life insurance thing on YouTube and my reaction, my mouth dropping, and I take the laptop and I march into the room where my husband is, and I'm like, look at this. Look at this. Why don't we know this stuff? Why has this stuff been hidden from us? It's right here on YouTube. I'm not even looking for it. And I was so angry. And looking back, like our life insurance policies are not really what ended up changing our financial lives. It was really just getting out there and investing. But that was the turning point when I thought wealthy people are doing things differently than the way we're doing it. And it's not because they're making more money in their job or even their business. I think that helps to make more money, but that was a turning point for us. But then you get into the question of control, and I face this a lot with our potential passive investors, especially if they do have like a real estate portfolio where they own 10 rental houses or something, and they're like, I can't give up control, I need control. Yet at the same time, we're saying passively invest with us and give up control. At the same time, we're like, get control of your money and start making decisions. So, can you speak to us about the need for control Where is it important and when is it important to delegate that with trust? I think that's a really difficult balance for a lot of people to strike because everybody's answer is a little different. So, what kind of guidelines can they use?
So this is going to open up a whole can of worms. Are you good with that?
That's my favorite kind of podcast.
So I'll tell you this, in our process, we have built in strategically that you need to know what sort of investor you are. Okay. And what's interesting about that is most people, when they interview us, they say, Wealth Without Wall Street, what do you invest in? Like you must have something or specifically some things that you invest in. And I need to know what they are because I just want an alternative, like from Wall Street. And what we do is we kind of put the brakes on them and say, you know what we invest in is not what you should invest in.
Mm,
And they're like, wait a minute, what's this all about? Because the way I am created to see the world is different than the way you were created to see the world. Everybody would agree with that, right? They know that their personality is unique, it's different. They might have some similarities to other people, but they have unique experiences, unique resources, unique stories and history, and also just the way that they see the world is different. So why would we all invest in the same things? Just because we're looking for ROI. And ROI does not equal freedom. It's creating a portfolio of what you invest in that supports your goals. And if your goals are, I don't really care about appreciation, I need cash flow today because the true formula to financial freedom is not something we made up. It's Robert Kiyosaki and all these other guys that are way smarter than us. Passive income greater than monthly expenses equals freedom, right? If I had money, if I walk out to my mailbox and there's $20,000 worth of income in that mailbox, and I have $18,000 worth of expenses, my calendar is completely blank. Like, imagine that for a second. Like, there are people listening right now saying, I don't even know what that means. I could even imagine not waking up Monday morning with my calendar already 80% of the time filled in for me. But it is the reality. If you have that money in your mailbox and you go to pay your bills and there's more money than you have coming in that doesn't require your active participation, you're free. Your calendar is completely blank. And you start to put in what is on that calendar. That is ridiculous power. That is ridiculous freedom. And if we can do that, then man, it's an amazing place to be. But if you think about how did we get there? It's about who you are as an investor. And I'm going to point this out as far as control, because I want to go back to that. I don't want to miss your question completely. People say, man, I want to invest in this mutual fund because, they've had good returns, historically speaking, right? Well, what is control in terms of that sort of investment? It's how close you are to the investment. Like that's how I would define it, because it's not necessarily that you have to be the operator of the investment. And that's where the difference is going to come in between off Wall Street type deals and Wall Street type deals. If I invest with a mutual fund, how far am I from the actual investment? And I would just challenge you right now, if you're listening to this, you say, man, I've always been Wall Street. I want you to tell me just three of the companies that are in that mutual fund. Can you even name three of the companies? Number one. Number two, can you name the CEO of those three companies or anybody on the board? Or imagine, like, I am literally putting dollars into something that go into a mutual fund manager's hand. That mutual fund manager is passing it on to somebody else, that's passing it on to somebody else, that's passing on to ultimately, this company who is run by a CEO and a board and all this other stuff. We literally have no idea what we're investing in, except for a prospectus that was provided to us largely in our 401k at the open annual enrollment. And they look at it and they say, oh, well, last year this one did good, so I'll invest there. That is the extent of the control that we have. It is zero control. Now compare that to an off Wall Street environment. And they say, Emma, you have a deal that you're raising money for. How close am I to the deal if I give you money? So I want you to, I'm going to turn the question to you. Break it down for me. Where's my money go from I hand it to you? Where does it go from there?
Such a good question. Last weekend, I got a text out of the blue from an investor who's planning on putting a good six figures into one of our projects. And he said, "Hey, I'll be there tonight. Let's go walk the property in the morning because I happen to be here this week." And out of the blue, he shows up, he drives out to our place, he knocks on our door, and we get out and we go down and take a walk of the property and chatted and talked and got to know each other. Now, is he running the property? No,
No.
because he's a limited partner. But when you know the name of the CEO or the boots on the ground and you can come show up anytime you want, that kind of transparency, I felt like what he had in his control, he was exercising. How many people are going to spend $500 on an airplane trip, a rental car, hotel to put in a six-figure investment? Not very many of them. How many people won't even do a $39 background check before they make a five or six-figure investment? So to me, it's more about what can you control about vetting out the company, vetting out the deal, vetting out the people who run the company. That's all in our control. And I can sort of do that in the stock market, I guess, but I'm never going to be able to go to dinner with him or me and Elon, we don't hang out.
Well, again, it's just, man, how close are you to the investment? And that's how I would gauge control. Again, there's no guarantees on investments. There's nothing. You're literally putting money at risk when you invest for the potential for future reward. But man, how close you are to it matters. And how aligned you are with the investment matters, right? If I am we have this disc profile that we've created, the investor DNA is what we call it. And by the way, people who are listening to the show can get access to that. I can give you a place to go to get it later.
Mhm.
If you don't know who you are as an investor, that's a place to start, right? But when you go and do this, you figure out, hey, I'm a high D on the disc I'm talking about the disc
Mhm.
DISC.
I'm
I'm a high
hiding.
D. Well, what I'm actually not personally, an S, but let's
Uh,
say that, for instance, you're a high D and you're like, man, I like to be in control. I like to be able to influence, right? I like to move fast. I like high rewards. I like to take a little bit of risk a lot of times. So those are some things about it. And if I said, well, hey, you know what? You need to go buy single family rentals, turnkey rentals. Do you realize how boring that would be for you? Literally, like as a high D, you would do one and you'd be like, this is garbage. I can't do anything about it. Somebody just pays every month. It shows up in my account, and I can't influence it. I can't talk about it hard. I mean, there's nothing really to it. It's just a done for you kind of just in the background until something breaks. And then they say, hey, by the way, you got to pay for ServPro to come out or whatever. D's do not love turnkey rentals. But you know who does? An S or a C, right? A C loves it because man, a C is real analytical. They love the idea of really just tried and true, steady, S's do too, steady, consistent returns. And they don't want to be involved. They don't want to have hands on. They don't want to be influential in it. They just want to say, hey, is this a good area? Is this a good operator? Can they give me consistent returns? I'm in. So the difference of those two things, how you see those two investments matters. And man, again, from there, it's just about control and what's going to actually get you to your ultimate goal of financial freedom.
yeah, there's so much that we can talk about with this because I feel like my natural personality is actually doesn't really fit very well with my investing personality, especially the older I get, the less D I act. I'm like, oh man, I feel like I have to start a business because we did this thing and people are asking us how we did it. And I'm not at the point where I feel like I'm just going to do a free mentorship or something like that. It's like, well, now I feel like I kind of have to start this business. But it goes back to what you said about having an open calendar. When we got to the point where our calendar was open because money was coming in to pay for our stuff, we just took 3 months and went on a sabbatical, put on backpacks and hiked across the state of Arizona for 3 months. And we had almost nothing on our calendar during that time. And then it was up to us when we got back from that, what things to start adding in. And the things that we're adding in, some of them are highest value, things that we really enjoy doing and things that we really feel are important. And some of it's just the peripheral stuff that comes along with making a commitment. And so you could get up right now and be like, I don't want to do this podcast with you anymore. I'm done. I'm going to go spend time with my kids. But you've chosen not to. And I think that that's sometimes where people say things like, well, if you're so wealthy and you're so successful, why are you still working? Because there's something about somebody who's doing any kind of work for money afterwards that almost makes them untrustworthy when they're saying, "Oh, I don't have to work for money. I choose to work for money." Like, "Oh, why are you still working?" So, do you have any of that pushback where people ask you those questions and then you get to talk about passion projects and choice, and how does that look for you?
Surprisingly, I don't get that question a lot, but to your point, I think it's a logical one, right? And to me, it's my day is more and more filled with the things that I'm passionate about and less about things that I have to do,
Mhm.
right? So work for me is getting to have conversations with people like you, getting to lead our mastermind conversations to where I'm pouring into people who are saying, okay, Joey, Russ, like, how did you guys do this? Like, who do you work with on the attorney side to deal with like estate stuff and entity structuring and tax strategy? Who's your tax attorney? Like being able to share, Russ and I have said this a million times. If you ever heard us, we're just beggars trying to tell other beggars where to find the bread.
Yeah.
And that's what we would love to do with our time is to constantly just be connectors, right? Hey,
Yeah.
this worked for us. Why wouldn't we tell you about it? And so that does put me on podcasts. That puts me in mastermind on stages and stuff like that. But it's because I really am passionate about it.
Mhm.
In fact, I left this out of my story early on, but when I was in the mortgage business, I had no reason to leave except that I literally was at a conference with Russ. He was my coach at the time. And I was sitting there and I was hearing all these stories of people's lives being affected by this whole way of thinking. And I remember thinking, why don't more people know about this? Right? Like I'm sitting here like this is gold. I don't understand why most people don't understand this. And it was literally like God put his thumb in my back and said, why don't you tell them about it? And I was like, I mean, my wife's pregnant with our fourth daughter at the time. I'm doing really well in the mortgage business. There's no reason like, that would just be unnecessary to just up and leave something that's comfortable and known. Remember, I
Mhm.
told you I'm an S personality. That means I'm steady, I'm loyal. I don't really like a bunch of conflict or change.
Yep.
And, but yet I just was like, God was like, you need to do this. Why don't you do it? And I literally turned to Russ and I was like, why don't I come do this with you? And he was like, really? Like, it did never even enter his mind that I would wanna leave, right? And, but it's the impact, the fact if you look at my vision board, in the middle of my vision board is impact, the word impact. Like, that's everything about my life, I want to be about impact, and, like, again, that goes back to my faith, goes back to my family, like, I have 5 daughters, and my oldest is 17, and she's not going to college because she has a land flipping business she's been working on for 2 years that pays her every single month that she spends less than 10 hours a week in.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and my 15-year-old, we've been working together on taking an online business course that how to buy like content blogs and newsletters and things
Mhm.
like this that are already building affiliate revenues. And today we purchased the first website together that she's going to run that's already making like $2,000 a month in passive income just from SEO and affiliate revenues. And like those are the things that I want to invest in my time and then share what we did with others so they can find the bread.
Yeah, I can't even there's not a whole lot to talk about other than that. It just gets more and more stories and examples of stuff that we want to be doing as parents and as mentors, and whether it's somebody, one of my investors, or somebody who knows me from social media, or my own kids especially, it's just such a great feeling to be able to just give back. The frustrating thing though, I don't know, my people often don't want it. Like you said, like this is gold. Why don't people know about it? And sometimes you feel like you're sharing this gold and people just are not interested, or they just don't think it's real, or they think it's a scam, or they don't have confidence that they can actually do it. We've been struggling with this over the last year or year and a half as people have lost money on an investment and they completely lose their confidence in their ability to do a good job at controlling their own money, and the the example I use is like, you have these young adult kids, and if they're not gonna jump out of the nest and soar right away, then I'm immediately looking inward, like, "What did I do? What did I do wrong? Did I homeschool them wrong? Did I parent them wrong?" Like, and bringing all the blame onto myself when a lot of times it's just the economy or it's just, the way the cookie crumbles and diversifying, and being able to absorb those losses and keep moving. Like, there's this whole psychology surrounding it that I feel like is really disempowering. So, how do you help people who are struggling with that crisis of confidence, or especially after they're coming back from a
I would say that the biggest light bulb for me was realizing how much it takes to be an investor, right? How much, like, is there anything else in your world or in your life that you spent very, very little time being educated on that you were super successful in? I mean, think about any athletics that you were a part of, academics, right? Relationships. You put in the least amount of effort and you expect to have amazing success. Nothing works that way. And yet, with money, we think I don't have to be a super educated investor. I can just throw some money at something and take a chance or whatever. That's a terrible idea, right? And so the things that we've been talking about today are all the arrows in my back, right? There are things that I've invested in that were terrible. And I realized that's because I am not that kind of investor. So that's where we developed investor DNA because, hey, people should know this. The second thing is, man, how many deals have you looked at? Every deal looks really good if you've seen two deals.
yeah,
But if you've
that's
seen
true.
200 deals,
Yeah,
those two deals could be the dogs of the whole barrel, right? But you don't know because you're not an investor yet. You've seen a couple of investments. Good for you. Now become an investor. And it wasn't until I started putting myself around other investors that I started to see things that were always there, but I never saw before. And what I'll tell you is in our masterminds, we literally have a speaker come in, they share for 30 minutes, there's a little Q&A, and then we kick the speaker out, right? And this happens every month. And we go around the horn, we say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where does this particular investment that just was explained to us fall for you? And I can tell you on several occasions, this has been going on for over 2 years now. I go into that conversation and I'm not the first one to go. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this was like a 9 or 10 out of 10 for me. And the first 3 or 4 people go in and they're like, yeah, this is a 3 out of 10, or this is a 4 out of 10. And I'm thinking to myself, what are were these guys listening? Was this girl even paying attention? This is a great deal. And then they start explaining that this is the kicker. We say, why is it a 3 out of 10? And just that simple question, you have no idea the resources that are happening in that room because that's where that investor that's been in 25 deals says, oh, well, this is why I would never invest in that. Because I remember 4 years ago, I invested in a deal that looked just like it. The cash flow didn't start for 24 months. That didn't work for me. The tax incentives, there's no depreciation. And that really killed my overall ROI. They start sharing things that you're like, huh, never thought about it that way. And by the way, I would not invest in that now because I heard so many other perspectives and I was able to glean what we say is it's like borrowing somebody else's paint, right? Or
yeah.
paying wholesale for somebody's retail issue that they
Mistake,
had to go
yes.
through. And it's like, why don't we do that? Because we're not in the right rooms with the right people to help us shave or compound, or excuse me, press time. I would rather take 100 years of other people's investing careers and keep it into, man, let's make it a year for me instead of 100 years. Right. So
Mhm.
that to me is like, man, if you've lost money, I'm sorry for you. We've all lost money, by the way. Anybody
Right.
who's on this investing journey, you will lose. There's no 100 percenters out there. But man, it should only encourage you to become the best investor you can be. And whether that's through a mastermind like what we've got, or finding your own local investing club, or whatever it might be, you owe it to yourself to invest in that knowledge. It's not going to happen overnight. And you have to be serious about being an investor.
We go to college for 4 years to pour ourselves into a career that we wanna become experts at to make money, but we
Exactly.
don't seem to put the same amount of effort into pouring ourselves into making money at investing. We maybe some people giving up too much control and too much trust a little too fast. And I think that, yeah, diversification is the correction against ignorance. I think Warren Buffett says it in a way that makes it sound like it's bad. Like, oh, if you diversify, you're ignorant. I don't think that's what he's saying at all. I think what he means is if you don't know that much about it, just give it a little bit. Just put a little bit in, see how it goes. And testing the waters almost. And I think when people are starting, sometimes they jump in a little much with 2 feet in before they know what they're doing, and they get burned, and then they think they don't know what they're doing. It's probably because they don't know what they're doing. So,
Exactly.
and people who know what they're doing lose the money all the time. There's the other flip side of that. It's balancing how much you're making to how much you're losing. That's really the winner there. So, Joey, thank you so much for sharing. And coming and just teaching us about taking control and taking control with confidence because I think there's a real lack of it. I see it again and again and again and would encourage people to reach out to you. We got wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passive income adventures so that they know where you came from and they can say thank you to me. There's no affiliate link there, although maybe we can talk about that afterwards.
Exactly. No,
Yes.
I'd love to connect with you. Again, we're looking for like-minded people who are on the same road to freedom. And if we can help you compress that time to get there faster, that just means more time with doing the things that you love. So, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be involved today.
Awesome. Thank you. Love what you're doing. You guys be sure to reach out after the show. I love the way Joey ended that talking about the gym buddy effect, which is what we're going after in our investing club as well. When we're looking at a deal together, doing a real deal in real time and trying to decide, do we want to do this deal? And getting that input from everybody there at the meeting. Some people have a lot of experience and have a lot to offer, and other people have less experience and are learning. But sometimes the person with the least amount of experience can add insights or poke holes in things. It's just a wonderful way to bring together a group of people who add value and synergy to one another. I urge you to find a community that you really feel like you can take part in, stretch yourself, push yourself, and again, compress that timeline of learning so that you can get successful where you want to be faster. There's no way to avoid having our own mistakes to learn from. Hopefully, we can lessen that by learning from the mistakes of other people. Networking is really the key to what we're doing in this business because it's about the people who can bring us deals, who can put capital into our deals, who can teach us. There's this entire ecosystem about wealth building that I've found requires a community more than any other activity I've been involved in. Please reach out to Joey after the show to see how you can get involved in his mastermind. We also have a free mastermind that meets every Monday night that you can learn more about at riseclubcapital.com, where we look at deals and decide together if we want to invest in them or not. We can do it as a group or individually. If you're looking to be completely passive and hands off after you do due diligence, that's the most important part of what we're doing here. Check us out at partnerwithrise.com, where you can book some time on our calendar to talk about your investing goals and see if we have any investments in our portal that can help you to reach financial freedom faster. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with Joey and me. It really means a lot to me. I feel like we're offering a lot of value and hopefully it's making your life better. But at the same time, we recognize that time is your most valuable asset. And the fact that you've chosen to spend some of that with us, it really means a lot. And we do not take it for granted. So please go ahead, set up that meeting with me, set up that meeting with Joey. We cannot wait to connect and hear more about your passive income adventure.